Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. Christian Hackenberg joining the show. It's our first week of game action between West Virginia and Penn State. Got some fan questions to discuss. And we got some breaking news I wanted to get into a little bit later in the show. But first, Christian Hackenberg joins the pod. Welcome into Hardcore Penn State Football. I'm Cory Lestochi. With me, as always, the great Sean Kane. And also, former Penn State quarterback Christian Hackenberg. How's it going today, gentlemen?
Doing good. How are you, Hack?
Well, appreciate you guys having me on.
I should say, host of the Mercury Podcast. First episode just dropped last night. How was that?
First one just dropped. It's fun. I'm excited about getting together with Bill. Is the mastermind behind. I'll give him credit for once in his life. But it's been a lot of fun getting involved with guys, and I think it's perfect timing as it pertains to the NIL, marketing, former player engagement, and figuring out a way how to give back to the program after you're done. That's been something I've struggled with. So it's a great platform. I'm really excited to bring content to the fans, and then hopefully platform for letting to have a voice and other folks to have surrounding the program some insight and just drive eyeballs and eyeballs and support top to bottom. And it's been a lot of fun and inning. So.
Yeah, it looked like a lot of fun. I mean, just hanging out in your basement seems like a lot of fun. So I'll have to find a way to get down there, play some pool, and check out all the things. I think a lot of fans, I was just reading some of the YouTube comments, a lot of the fans were like, hey, Hack, where did you get that hat? Hey, Hack, where did you get that helmet? And I'm like, that's not the point of the episode, people. Like, we got to get a tour of the whole house just so people can kind of relax a little bit.
Maybe we'll do that. Preseason's always tough too. It's always hard to come in with so many unknowns, and I'm kind of like I'm very dry to that. There's no real gray area. I know a lot of people like the preseason because you can know those gray areas and all the what if and maybes. But I'm pessimist from that side where I'm like, let's come on, let's let these boys snap a football and see what happens. It was fun, like I said, to get the first one out. And yeah, I saw the one Lions hat. That's an exclusive, guys. I got that from a big for the program, Will Hoover event in Cape May, New Jersey. So unfortunately, I can't say that's available to the general public.
Gotcha. That's funny to know.
Exclusive content there. Yeah.
We'll get to West Virginia in a second, but we do want to talk about. We jokingly talked about it before we hopped on the show today. Just how much money do you think you would have made from NIL, right? Like, how jealous are you for? I mean, I'm sure you're happy for the players now, but I mean, in the time, especially where you weren't even sure if you're going to get to a bowl game. I mean, imagine if you were at least able to pocket some money on the side. I mean, are you happy for him? Are you frustrated for him? I mean, and how much money do you think you would have wrapped in? And what is one NIL deal you would have liked to maybe have to got for yourself?
Yeah, listen, man. I think it's great. I think it's a long time coming, and I think I kind of touched on it. I think the way the inside out is wasn't well thought out, but ultimately it's gonna run its course itself out. But I think it's a great thing now. Personally, am I jealous? Like, yeah, you're sitting around drinking some out of campfire. You're like, man, Dad, and my brother would have been pretty fun, just all things considered, the timing, everything. But that is what it is. It is hindsight's 2020. But yeah, man, from an IL deal standpoint, I would have wanted to take care of my guy in some way, shape, or form. So you get some type of group that's nice. And then personally, I'm simple. I'd have just a truck or something like that. I'd have been happy. I was driving around an old like one Silverado that my uncle had that I bought off him. But yeah, like a nice something and earlier than I got mine would have been, but.
Was that your first purchase once you signed an NFL contract? Was a new truck?
Oh yeah. I always wanted a bought a Raptor. I was like, that's exactly what I wanted. And then, man of pleasures and simple vices, I guess.
Yeah. So, what I know you talked about, like, it really wasn't well thought out, and I think everybody agrees with that. What changes would you like to see with the way NIL is right now?
I just think lack of education on finances, I think too. But when you hand a bunch of money to kids and they don't understand just basic tax laws and expectation, you just don't know. You don't know what you're stepping into. And I mean, I experienced that when I got to the NFL, right? Like I had financial, fortunately, to kind of help me guide me and start walking me down. When you're 18 years old, those things really aren't crossing your mind, especially if you're a recruit that's getting recruit program like Penn State, Alabama, like one thing on your mind, man. So when you step into the general education surrounding it's tough. And then I just think have so much money in college from a donor standpoint, from TV point, from all of these things, a much better way to make it all inclusive, all encompassing. And then also players with the fair valuation, the opportunity to make that money, and do it the right way. And you see that are out there that are basically kind of trying to hide for play type of deals, and it's just, I know that Congress is involved, and there's just moving parts, so it's really hard to attack it right, and not know that you path if that's going to be the playing field in a year or 2 months, you know what I mean? So it's just, I think they should have thought it out more. I think there's a ton of different ways you could have done it, but that would take this entire podcast. But just generally speaking, I thought opening the floodgates is a really slope. And when they went down that model, you have people who take advantage of it.
Yeah, no doubt. And I just think the lack of rules, and then the rules that we have, when you combine NIL with transfer portal, and then people just start following rules, like everybody knows tampering's going on. Yeah. And it just feels like everybody's asleep at the wheel. And I just think it's unfortunate. It's
essentially unrestricted agency in right now. And like to your point, when you're talking about the top % of athletes, like I said, this it was marketed. I mean, if I was Bryce Young, Alabama after that national championship game,
and I think we may have lost him.
Yeah, some technical difficulties.
Yeah, we're I think it was related to his Wi-Fi. I don't. Oh,
there we go. We got him.
All right.
So you were saying?
I was saying, if I was Bryce Young, I'd have hit the transfer portal right after that. Been like, hey Nick, you want me back? Like, you have the ability, the market from that standpoint. Hey, Shoes offering me this amount of money. The programs are doing it. I just think it's pretty. I just think, like I said, I think it was the wild west.
Yeah. Hey, Hack, I don't know if we're going to be able to keep you in here. I'm guessing it might be related to just an internet connection. I do want to try to at least get your thoughts on the game before we get you out of here this weekend. Penn State having West Virginia come to town for maybe one of the biggest home openers in quite some time. Lots of optimism around it. I guess what are your Cliff Notes version of what to expect this weekend and what fans should be looking forward to?
Yeah, I think actually rolling out a young back and trying to figure out how he's going to get in a rhythm, and ultimately what role he's going to play moving forward. I think it's a great first game. Penn State top to bottom from a roster standpoint, it's a better roster, but you're bringing back an old. It's going to be a great environment. It's kind of, like I said, I think it's favored from just a Jimmy's and Joe's standpoint to Penn State. So being able to kind of dip yours in the water with all the lights, all the focus on you, and figure out what you're going to do and react in some situations is going to be big for them. But ultimately, like I said, I think this comes down to the Jimmys and Joes Saturday, and Penn State's got more than Virginia does at this point in time. So I look for it to be high energy. It may be a little bit of a slower start than people expect. They'll hit their rhythm. Ability to run the football is going to be big, and I expect that defense to come out.
Okay, so the plan's going to be here, Hack. We're going to have you rejoin on a different device. We'll see if we can get you back in 1 second, all right?
All right, sounds good. Good.
Okay, while we wait, let's go ahead and break the news that we just got 30 minutes ago, Sean, that offensive lineman Landon Tangwall has officially retired. Oh, we have him back already?
I think so.
Okay, let's try it now. Can you hear us?
Yeah, is this okay?
Yeah, I think you sound better.
I think you sound better.
I'm on my phone here, so we'll figure this out.
No worries. Appreciate everyone being patient with us, but you sound much better.
Cool.
Okay. Let's just pause for a second. I was breaking the news about Landon Tangwall retiring from the NFL.
From the team.
From the team, sorry. Finishing his career off. It appears that he had an injury, unknown whether it was the injury he suffered last year that flared up again, or whatever the case may be, but he's kind of been able to finish his career, which two big blows, right? Landon Tangwall, very popular among Penn State fans, but also Penn State is going to have a hole at left guard now that they're going to have to fill, and that won't be easy for him. Hack, you kind of had a polarizing experience with offensive linemen. First year, you had multiple NFL starters from that offensive line. The following year, James Franklin always mentions that there was, 6 offensive linemen on scholarship when he got there. So pretty big opposite, polar opposite differences between the two. Can you just speak about the importance of having those big guys up front?
I mean, it's foundational in football, right? If you can turn around and hand the ball off for 3.5 yards, every time, you can win a lot of football games that way. And having that type of presence is huge. Ball control, clock management, the whole nine. So when you look at this Penn State team and what Coach Franklin's done from a recruiting standpoint and also a development standpoint, I give a lot of credit. I give a lot of kudos, especially with the turnover on the coaching staff from an offensive philosophy standpoint, and even the offensive line coaches. I think they're on their third one since I've been there. So being able to get some consistency there and some development's been big. And, I mentioned it on our podcast, just talking about, when you have a young quarterback, it just helps everything. It smooths out that process for him. There's a lot of belief and consistency that comes along with that from an offensive game plan standpoint on a week-to-week basis. So it's huge, man. And, very unfortunate that happened. It's part of the game, though. You have people step away, and it's a very physical game. And, hats off, lots of prayers to that family as they're going through that, because it's not easy mentally transitioning out of that. But I'm sure the staff will do a great job of, putting the right resources around him and make that transition as smooth as possible.
Right. Let's go back to Drew Allar real quick now that we have a better connection with you. What advice do you have for the young quarterback? He has had a great opportunity that you didn't necessarily have, as far as being able to get a bunch of game reps without having to be the guy. You kind of got thrown in there and did a pretty damn good job yourself. But still, this is his first year starting. Still, he's going to have to manage expectations right out of the gate. If you had to speak with him, which I'm not sure if you've had the chance or not, what advice would you give him, especially going into game 1, which is going to be a primetime game under the lights in Beaver Stadium?
Yeah, to that point, I did actually have a chance to talk with him a little bit before the season, it's so cliche. People talk about, tune out the noise and focus on what you have the control over. And I told them that's impossible. You go into the media and people are like, oh, do you listen to this? Did you see this? It's like, well, yeah, I saw it. But for me, I think it's just really important to acknowledge that that's going to be part of today's game and being at a place like Penn State, but not let that control you and in a way put your focus on a different thing. And for me, that was the process, right? Like get just lost in the offensive system. Know that it's going to be a kind of a crescendo, right? Like you're going to do some great things. You're going to make some mistakes. It's all part. There's failure involved in any sport. So being able to take those things, learn from them, and continue to build, and just know that as long as you keep what's most important, and in that case for him, it's going to be doing his job on every snap to the best of his ability and putting his team in the best position to be successful and win football games. Focus on that, man. Like know that there's going to be noise, know that that's always going to be in the background, but the ability to just say, hey, I acknowledge that that's happening. I acknowledge that that's around, but when you wake up every day, know that your best foot forward is going to be surrounded around how do I make this team better? How do I put my teammates in positions to be successful? How do I put myself in positions to be successful? I think that helps. And that was one thing that Coach O'Brien did a great job with me my freshman year in doing, right? Like I always said it, I was dumb. Like I kind of naturally just tuned out all the noise, and I just really wanted to learn football. I wanted to study defenses. I wanted to know why, we could run the football against this certain front with this, linebacker alignment and the leverage and the angles. Like just get lost in those things and then make that just a part of your weekly routine.
That's fantastic. I'm always interested too, as far as, and this applies not just for quarterbacks, but for everybody. When you come out, in those wide out environments, or in this case, the helmet stripe environment, how do you, I guess, manage those things in the Franklin always talks about taking some time to absorb it all. But I'm also curious too. We see some quarterbacks that, have a bunch of overthrows early, or too excited, or maybe don't take the chances because they don't want to make the mistake. Did you ever have those kind of thoughts in your head? And I guess how do you manage those kind of things? Did we lose him? He's fallen asleep on us.
He is frozen.
He is just asleep. If we get him back, we will get him back. But I'm glad we were able to at least get him for a second. I'm going to go back to us for now. And if we get him back, we can. Apologize for that, everybody. It's technical difficulties. Usually doesn't happen, but glad we got him for a little bit. He wasn't going to necessarily give us a score prediction per se tonight, but he was going to give us some keys. We'll see if we can get him back for that before we send him on his way. But Sean, what are your thoughts on that? I mean, to me, I just think about like Sean Clifford, right? And, like sometimes, especially I think about like the 2020 Indiana game where he was just throwing high right off the bat. And you're like, is that how much of that is due to just excitement? And then I think about Hack and how he wasn't afraid to throw right off the bat. He wasn't afraid to give Allen Robinson a chance. But then you see other quarterbacks and they're willing to almost not throw that deep ball and just take the underneath stuff, sometimes to a fault. And so I'm always curious about how those kind of things are waging in a quarterback's mind throughout the game.
I mean, I always think anytime I'm at Beaver Stadium or really any big venue like that, I know millions of people are watching me at home and I have 100 and some thousand people here. Like, how do you deal with that? And I know Hack said he just was able to get lost in the process and everything. And I think that's really the only way that's probably the best answer I've heard on that and how to do that. But I just think it's a lot easier said than done. And like you said, Cliff, he would come out throwing high sometimes, and even Trace. I think 2017 Michigan game stands out to me. He was a little off early, but then he settled down as the game went on. And I just think that's the kind of thing that we're all human, right? And we're all going to feel some nerves.
Yeah, no, for sure. Any other final thoughts on Landon Tangwall before we move on from that?
Yeah, it's just unfortunate, man. I mean, he's a kid that had a lot of potential, played well for us when he played, and the injury bug is rough. And everything we know about Landon, and he's a really good kid, and I think he's going to be successful in whatever he ends up doing, and that's definitely a plus. And he medically retired. I'm pretty sure he's still going to be around the team. That typically happens when guys medically retire. They'll stay around the team because they'll still be on scholarship, as he should be. And yeah, it just sucks. It's just an unfortunate situation, and I feel bad, and we wish him the very, very best.
Yeah, I'll switch up the news to some happy news. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can go to the description right now. If you're listening on the podcast, just hit up Twitter and you'll find it there. The Big Ten Hardcore PSU FB Pick'em is back. Make sure to get your picks in. We will leave that open until tomorrow night. So it's a quick turnaround. But the first game, Minnesota-Nebraska, is on Thursday. And you need to have your picks in for them. I think we're already I think we're already over 20-something picks. So make sure to get those in.
What game is Friday?
There's
Florida, Utah, or they? Oh, right.
I think it's Florida, Utah's Thursday as well.
Oh, but, okay. So they'll be going up against each other. Okay.
But there's a lot of games on Friday, including Central Michigan at Michigan State.
Sparty, yeah.
Yeah. We did get word that Hack will be is done for the night. I think it's because he might be living inside like some sort of World War II bunker down there.
I mean, it is a cave of man caves, but
yeah.
But it was great talking to him.
Yeah.
And it's great that he'll be with us here at Mercury.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to get him back on again at some point later this year. And again, his podcast, his first episode of Brandon Bell, who I would like to get on next week, is on this YouTube channel, State Media. And so go check that out, the Pocket Podcast. First episode aired yesterday. And you'll get to see what we're talking about as far as his basement goes. Okay, so just for the rest of the show, the plan, we're going to talk a little bit about NFL players, Penn State players in the NFL. Some cuts occurred. We're going to go through that a little bit. And then we're going to have final thoughts on camp / the press conference that we had on Tuesday with James Franklin. We'll talk West Virginia, and then we'll finish up with bowl predictions, pick'em predictions, and then our prediction. Sound like a plan?
Sounds like a plan. Let's get into it.
Okay. Okay, first thing, right off the bat. Penn State players in the NFL preseason. I mistakenly, again, thought we had 4 preseason games. We are down to 3. So cuts happened, and some surprising cuts. I mean, just kind of devastating when you think about, and also head scratching when you think about some of them. The biggest one that comes to mind to me right off the bat is the fact that Blake Gillikin for the Saints, punter for the Saints, got cut. And I just, for the life of me, I can't seem to quite understand that. Now I understand that I guess they had a good rookie punter, whatever. I don't really care if he had an inconsistent preseason or not. Blake Gillikin's the man, the myth, and the legend. And I think they were trying to trade him originally, and they decided to just end up cutting him. And so I'd be very surprised to see where Blake Gillikin ends up.
Yeah, there's been a bit of a trend about trading specialists this offseason. So that's been interesting. But, I mean, you always need a punter. So I think Blake will find a job. Tough thing for Blake, though, is there's only 32 of those jobs. So teams don't really keep a backup punter. But do I think he's one of the 32 best in the NFL? I do. So I do think he'll find something, especially with injuries, attrition, things like that. Speaking of specialists, Jonathan Sutherland got cut from Seattle. we all really respect Jonathan Sutherland here and what he could do on special teams. I think it's just hard keeping a guy though that you really question what you're going to get out of him on defense.
Well, he also got injured.
Oh, did he get injured? Okay. All right. Well,
yeah, he got waived. I think it technically was considered an injury waiver.
I did not know that. Okay. And then the Patriots cut every quarterback except Mac Jones. They cut Bailey Zappi as well, in addition to.
Must have some dirt on somebody. Like, hey, you don't even need a backup quarterback. I'm the only one you need.
Belichick, the GM, does some head scratching things sometimes. I mean, obviously they'll probably take they'll pick somebody up. They might even, if Zappi clears waivers, they might get picked up on the practice squad. Same thing with Trace. You never know. Do you think Trace will start looking north?
Like geographically north?
Yes, above the United States.
Oh, I was like, are you telling AFC North, NFC North?
No, he's already pretty far north of Foxborough, but a little further.
Could go play with Calgary with Tommy Stevens.
I mean, honestly, and it's not like you have to be a really good football player to play in Canada. And even when he was here, I kind of always thought of him as an NFL backup, and then in a few years he might go to Canada. And a few years later, and I could see him going to Canada. But I do hope he could find another NFL team. It'd be cool to keep him in the league. But if not, I think he could. I think he could do some really good work up there.
Yeah, and just since we're talking about the players that are cut, and that's kind of just sad, I'm going to list off real quick all of the players currently on an NFL roster and that are active. So Shaka Toney, who's been suspended for the year, doesn't count. Troy Apke, who is injured for the year, doesn't count. These are all active players in the NFL, and I thought it'd be worth just running through them if you're curious. Also, shout out to everybody on YouTube who's in the comments. If you're watching live, we very much appreciate it, and again, apologize for some technical difficulties, but very glad you are here. If you want to drop your score predictions throughout the night, you can do that. And make sure you've liked the video and subscribed to State Media. Okay, you ready, Sean?
Let's hear him.
Okay. Linebacker Jesse Luketa on Arizona. Defensive end Arnold Ebiketie with the Falcons. Odafe Owe with the Ravens, defensive end. Jordan Stout, punter kicker for the Ravens. Ryan Bates, offensive guard for the Bills. Daquan Jones, defensive tackle for the Bills. Connor McGovern, offensive guard for the Bills. Etor Gross-Matos, defensive end for the Panthers, who actually had a good game the other day. Miles Sanders, running back for the Panthers. Jaquan Brisker, safety for the Bears. Nick Scott, safety for the Bengals. Micah Parsons, linebacker for the Cowboys. Jason Kabinda, fullback for the Lions. Sean Clifford, quarterback for the Packers. Rasheed Walker, offensive tackle for the Packers. And I believe they had an injury there, so I think Rasheed Walker is potentially a starter there. Speaking of potentially a starter, Juice Scruggs, center for the Texans, has an opportunity to play a lot. Will Fries, offensive lineman for the Colts. Brendan Strange, tight end for Jacksonville. Parker Washington, receiver for Jacksonville. Donovan Smith, offensive tackle for the Chiefs. Defensive tackle Austin Johnson with the Chargers, if I can read my handwriting. Mike Gesicki, tight end for the Patriots, who hopefully will be ready for week 1. Saquon Barkley, running back for the Giants. Linebacker Cam Brown for the Giants. Adrian Amos, safety for the Jets. Tight end Pat Freiermuth for the Steelers. Cornerback Joey Porter Jr. for the Steelers. Receiver Allen Robinson for the Steelers. Shout out to long snapper Chris Stoll, making it with the Seahawks. Long snapper of the year last year. Tig Brown with the 49ers, safety. Also another shout out to Kevin Givens, defensive lineman for the 49ers. He got so much crap for leaving early, and he's done nothing but make a lot of money. So shout out to him. Chris Godwin, receiver for the Bucks. Jahan Dotson, receiver for Washington. Receiver Mitch Tinsley for Washington. And I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. Marcus Allen got cut.
Yes, I think so. I don't know if he's been picked up by anybody.
It sucks. Yeah. Kevin Givens, I was thinking this the other day. Like, I was comparing this team to 2016. He's the only defensive lineman from that team that's still playing in the NFL. And he was just, I think he still had 2 years of eligibility left. So, big shout out to him. He's been a good piece to that San Francisco defensive line. And God, having Tig there, that's going to cause a lot of excitement out there. And he's going to be able to, just wreak havoc. I think he's going to be able to do a lot for them right out of the box too. So, no Dolphins from Penn State.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Well, Mike Gesicki was the only one there for a few years. Blacknell was actually on the practice squad for a little bit, a couple of years back. But yeah, Gesicki just really didn't fit the scheme, unfortunately. But I wanted Brent Strange in this last draft.
Yes, we remembered that.
Yes, because I thought he would be a perfect fit in that scheme.
Yeah, and there were some other head scratchers along the way, but the Blake Gillikin one to me is going to probably be the one that sticks out the most. But very, very happy for Chris Stoll. Always like the guys who follow us on Twitter, and he's one of them. So he gets extra love.
Yeah, he likes our stuff sometimes too. So we see him out there on these Twitter streets.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the NFL before we say goodbye? Did you get any Penn? I don't know if you've done your fantasy draft yet. Did you get any Penn Staters on your fantasy team?
Pat Frymouth.
Nice.
Yep. I think he's the only one though. But I snagged him in got round 7 or 8. So
nice. That's good. He was going quick I think he went round 4 or 5 for me. So
yeah, maybe he went earlier. I don't remember. But yeah, he's my starting tight end. So hoping for a big year from Pat.
Nice.
How about
you? Saquon.
Okay. Yeah, Saquon got picked the pick before me. I think I picked 8th. I picked Bijan in the first round.
Gotcha. Well,
but if Saquon fell to me, I would have taken him.
Let's talk practice notes and final camp thoughts and impressions, if you will. Pretty meaty, all things considered, press conference on Tuesday, which is a little bit surprising. Usually we don't get a lot of things. The biggest thing probably being James Franklin did not announce who the starting quarterback was, but he talked a bunch about Drew Allar and specifics about how well he's doing, specifically talking about lack of turnovers and how well Drew Allar is taking care of the football. He said they got to practice 13 or 14 before Drew Allar threw an interception, which is just crazy. The other interesting note was they discussed how they keep these metrics, and it's not just interceptions during practice, but it's also interception decisions, whether it was a good or bad decision, and then an interception type throw. So maybe you had the right decision, but it was a not so good throw and the defender just dropped it. They keep track of all of those things, but they also keep track of them year to year. So they're actually able to go back and look at what Sean Clifford and what Trace McSorley did. Audrey Snyder actually asked for some specifics between comparing them, but James Franklin didn't go down that road. But nonetheless, I thought it was really interesting. Everyone talking about Penn State this year, if there was anything negative to say, they love talking about Drew Allar being young and inexperienced and how he should have got more playing time last year. I don't agree with any of that because he played a bunch compared to a lot of people in his recruiting class. But then you see that he's taking care of the football against what we think to be a really good defense and an opportunistic defense. And that makes you feel way better about maybe limiting those freshman mistakes. So I guess sophomore mistakes. So that to me is a very good sign, Sean.
Yeah, when you have a big arm quarterback like Drew, one of the concerns will automatically be interceptions. Why? Well, when you have a big arm like him and you're only 18, 19 years old, you're going to want to use that arm a lot. It's like giving an 18 or 19-year-old a Ferrari. They're going to want to go 130 miles an hour. And for Drew to have that discipline in practice, that says a lot about him and how mature he is and how poised he is. And he doesn't feel the need to, just show off his arm just to show it off. And I have no doubt about it. Like, he's still dropping dimes and everything, and I'm sure he's threading the needle between being aggressive and being smart with the football and not hurting your team. And I mean, James Franklin's talked about I forget the exact numbers, but he'd rather you throw for, complete 65% of your passes or 60% of your passes and have no interceptions rather than complete 80% of your passes and have 2 or 3 interceptions. And I think that's kind of a perfect way to put it. And and think about this, Cory. This is probably the best defense he's going up against all year. And he gets to go up against them every single day in practice. So if he's doing that against this defense, then I think he's in for a big year, provided he's the starter. And we just don't know yet if he's the starter. I just have no idea. He didn't throw an interception the first 13 or 14 practices. I don't know. Mystery.
Yeah. It's funny, especially during camp, right? Because everyone loves to do that. Like, if your offense looks too good, then everyone begins to question your defense. And if your defense does too good and everyone questions your offense, you can't really win, right? And so you hear good things about this, then you begin to question the other way. Like, oh, is the defense not getting enough turnovers in? Are they not forcing enough turnovers? But I think we will have a better idea about that this time next week. Which, speaking of that, you are new here, you haven't been around for quite some time. Well, first of all, welcome. But secondly, we will be going to twice a week starting next week on Monday. So starting Monday, 7 p.m. Eastern, every Monday, Wednesday. Monday will be more of a recap show. Wednesday will be more of a look ahead to the following week. That's the plan moving forward for the rest of the regular season. So if you were sick of us already, then you're really going to be sick of us because we're not going anywhere. So thank you guys for being here. And I want to move next to what James Franklin said about the defensive lineman, because I thought that was also pretty notable. The first thing really being that they feel that they have 5 or 6 guys at defensive tackle that are going to play a lot of football. The defensive tackle position was a position that all offseason we were told it needs to get bigger, needs to get stronger. And I'm just kind of ready for all of that kind of conversation to be done. We're going to talk about West Virginia in a little bit here, but they have a good opportunity against a good offensive line to prove all those doubters and haters wrong. So I'm very much looking forward to it. Notably, they said Keziah Izzard is healthy and ready to go. There was some issues about if he was banged up or not. And Franklin jokingly mentioned that maybe it was a veteran move by being injured for a little bit, because now everyone else has like camp legs, and Keziah Izzard's running around looking really fresh and looking really good. So Izzard seems to be ready to rock and roll. And then he specifically mentioned Hakeem Beamon and Zane Durant as 2 other guys that put on a lot of really good weight this offseason. So looking forward to all of those guys in the middle, just kind of proving everyone else wrong, or at least coming out with their head on fire. And then, Sean, you don't even have to say anything about the defensive line or defensive ends, right? I mean, we know what to expect from those guys.
Yeah, I mean, they have the potential to be an elite group. I think you definitely have 5 guys that you really trust. And then, now he didn't get the green light. We'll get into the green lights too. Jamel Lyons is a name that gets brought up a lot. and that you hear a lot about. And I don't think he necessarily burns his red shirt this season. But he's just one of those guys. And I could get into the guys that were green lit, and bring up something to Cory that we discussed over text, but just going to bring it up again. So Zion Tracy, Elliott Washington, Tony Rojas, and King Mack have all gotten the green light. So for those of you who aren't too familiar with that, Franklin does green, yellow, red every year for the freshmen that he expects to play, and they have no intention of keeping red-shirted. They get a green light. Guys that might not be red-shirted, might be red-shirted, they get a yellow light. Guys that they don't think are ready to play yet, they get a red light. So 2 of the 4 guys are cornerbacks. And like I said, this is something that Cory and I have discussed a little bit. And we all feel good about the starting corners. Everybody. I feel really good about Kalen King. I think he might be the best cornerback in America. Johnny Dixon, I think, has a chance to be an all Big Ten, maybe second or third team. Daquan Hardy, good in the slot, proven player. But after that, I mean, Cam Miller, who Franklin did highlight in the press conference, by the way, and I've heard nothing but good things about, and freshman. I mean, I wish there was more there, only because it's a long season in the Big Ten, and guys get hurt. I mean, that's just the nature of football. That's the nature of playing in this conference, especially, if we're trying to play for the playoffs, we could be playing 14, 15 games. So I just wish we had somebody else there, and I think that was the reason we tried to bring Storm Duck in. Now, you could say Cam Miller beat Storm Duck out. True. But that was depth. And that tells me that the staff at least might be concerned about something similar that I'm concerned about. What do you think, Cory?
I just think I don't disagree with what you're saying. But at the same time, in the world of transfer portal, I don't know if you can get anything better than what you have, realistically, right? I mean, what you really want is 4 guys that have playing experience that are proven commodities. I don't really know if that exists anymore in college football. The best you can wish for is really what Penn State has. You got 3 guys that have played a bunch of football, have produced quite a bit, and in addition to that, you have a lot of young guys behind them that look pretty promising. I don't think you can get anything better than that in college football nowadays. Yes, if one of the top 3 guys gets injured, do you maybe have some question marks about how everyone else moves up? Sure. But you can say that about most positions in college football across all college football teams. Injuries are injuries, and you're going to have to live with them. But I'm not too worried about it. And honestly, like you mentioned, Storm Duck coming in, they also brought in Davian Collins from Mississippi State. I don't know what else you can do, right? I mean, realistically, seriously, I mean, you've got 2 really, really good corners. Then you have a 3rd guy that's played a bunch of football and is a gamer, in Daquan Hardy. Just having those 3 is better than most people. And then you think you have a really good corner in Cam Miller, who played quite a bit last year, and then you got at least 2 other young freshmen that are hopefully going to play a lot of football this year. I don't really know what else you can do, Sean, in this world, right? I don't think there's anything better than what you currently have. And if you're worried about corner this year, wait till we talk about next year, but we won't go there.
Oh, I am next year. But yeah, and I get what you're saying. I mean, nobody's questioning the top 3 guys. I mean, I think you'd have to be crazy too. It might be, the best starting combination in the Big Ten. However, like, take defensive end, for example. If, God forbid, Adisa Isaac or Amin Vanover or Chop get hurt, okay. Tonight in a Sutton's there, or Amin Vanover's there, or Zariah Fisher's there. If Kalen King or Johnny Dixon get hurt, I mean, it starts getting dicey. I mean, and that's just the reality. And maybe Cam Miller's all ready to go, and this will be no concern at all. And then I'll say that's great, and we'll be fine. But I just hope he's ready. And if he is, then I feel a whole lot better than I do.
I don't know if you're comparing apples to apples, though, right? Because you might have 4 corners on the field at one time. You're not going to have 4 defensive ends on the field at one time. If you look at defensive line as a whole, now you're talking about having considerable more depth there, but still you can poke holes in that, right? What if Beeman goes down? What if any of the
I still feel good about 4 other guys, though.
You feel good about 4 other defensive tackles?
If Beeman goes down, yes. Izzard, Vandenberg, Durant, yes, I'm blanking, of course. And
yeah, and you can name them, but I mean,
yeah,
I feel
better than I do about Cam Miller and some freshmen that haven't done anything yet. Yes.
No, but you're not. You have to include Hardy in that conversation. I feel good about Hardy,
but I don't know if Hardy could play outside.
I would feel better about Hardy having to step into that role, or even a Keaton Ellis, Zakee Wheatley moving into that role as well, versus, say, Devon Townley coming in and playing a bunch of
and
football.
Devon Ellis is there.
I get what you're saying. I just don't think you can get into
I just think there are more proven commodities there. And like I said, Cam Miller could end up being really good. And I do hear what you're saying about Keaton Ellis, and Zakee Wheatley. They both have some corner experience at Penn State. But they also haven't played there in a long time. I mean, Keaton Ellis has been here a long, long time, and I don't think he's played corner since he was a freshman.
Right.
But hopefully it doesn't come to that. And hopefully everybody stays healthy and we're fine. But nonetheless, those young guys are going to play a lot, even if there are no injuries, because it's a lot of reps for just 3 guys to be playing. So I think you're going to be seeing a lot of them. But it'll make me feel better having them on the same field as Kane. That's going to just make life a whole lot easier for them.
I think you're manufacturing a little preseason hysteria because you're just so excited for the season. You're starting to overthink things a little bit. I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah, it's those staying up at midnight, 1 a.m. and I'm like, cornerback.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what's happening.
And it could be, but
I do want to mention that Tony. We talked about Tony Rojas a lot this offseason, and sure enough, he gets that green light. Expect him to play a bunch of football this year. I also wanted to mention, you mentioned Cam Miller, but he did say that they expect Cam Miller to be on 4 special teams units. So he's going to be playing a lot in special teams. And then Zion Tracy, a guy who kind of flew under the radar, even on this podcast, getting some love there. Remember, go back, was that last summer, 2 summers ago, when Zion Tracy had that really good camp?
Yeah.
And going up against some Penn State receivers, were recruits at that time, and kind of proved in that camp he deserved a spot. And he's just done nothing but continue to prove himself as he's now potentially greenlit. I mean, that's crazy to me, right? Zion Tracy, just a guy from New York, 3-star guy, and he's continued to improve, and he's got to the point now where we might see him in 5+ games this year.
Yeah, it's cool to see a story like his, right? Because I mean, some of these guys, like Hack, for example, they're big time recruits from, end of their sophomore year into their junior year. And that wasn't the case with Zion Tracy. Zion had to work his butt off just to get here. And he did. And he's obviously making the most of it. And we might need him this year. I mean, he wouldn't be greenlit if there wasn't the possibility of us needing him, and at least on special teams. And I also think having a guy like him, a guy like King Mack, and Elliot Washington, it gives you more athletes to work with on special teams. And maybe, like we talked about, regardless of, injury and everything, Daquan Hardy, Kalen King, and Johnny Dixon are going to be logging a lot of snaps on defense. So we're gonna need those. We're gonna need more guys on special teams to be able to take reps. And like you said, Franklin already mentioned, Cam Miller's gonna be on 4 different special teams units.
Yeah. Sean, just real quick, Theo Johnson was interviewed this week as well. Brought up Khalil Dinkins, and we've talked about Khalil Dinkins a bunch. But can you just tell the people a little bit more about what to expect from this tight end room this year?
Yeah. So Theo, I mean, Brenneman loves to, talk up how impressed he's been with Theo Johnson. If you haven't seen his interview, check it out. It's on his podcast, Next Up, with Adam Brenneman. And he said he has all the talent to win the Mackey Award. And I see it. I mean, he was a highly recruited guy, and he played well last year. Had some injuries early on in the season, but he did well, complimenting Brenton Strange, and now he's the guy. And I think that's kind of the way it should be, right? In a way, talented guy gets the reins late into his career. Think about Mike Gesicki, Pat Fryermuth. They were starters. They're basically their first days on campus, and especially Mike. I mean, you're not necessarily ready for that role that early. And then Tyler Warren, we all know how great of an athlete he is. Played high school quarterback, and he's another guy that's just going to take a bigger role this year. He's probably going to be the second tight end. And yeah, like Cory mentioned, Khalil Dinkins. He seems to be a guy that's impressed them both blocking and catching the ball. And I think he's going to be able to hold off Jerry Cross, to hold off those 2 stud freshmen that we have that we got the past recruiting class, because of his consistency and just his balance. And I think next season, if now Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren both have another year of have at least one more year of eligibility left after this year, if they both decide to go to the NFL, I think there's definitely a world where Khalil Dinkins is a starter next year. So that's just a testament of how well he's done here and how much he's progressed since he's been here.
Absolutely. Is there any other notes that you wanted to mention? I don't really know if I want to go into the whole rule stoppage conversation too much. But is there anything else you really want to talk about, Sean?
Yeah. So Mike Yurcich is going to be in the booth this season.
Yeah, we do have a fan question about that. So.
Okay, well, I'll hold off till then.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, also
didn't mean to cut you off or anything, but just wanted to let you know.
No. I always do that too. I jump on questions too early. Drew Shelton, Franklin mentioned that he's made some real progress at right tackle. So if you remember last year when Olu went out, Drew Shelton was his backup, filled in very, very nicely that last month of the season and in the Rose Bowl. Made the switch over to right tackle, and Caden Wallace, from all appearances, won that battle for the right tackle position. I don't want to say easily, but it was pretty decisive that he won it. But Franklin did mention that he's been happy with Shelton's improvement.
Yeah, which I'm not here to tell you that there's going to be a Caden Wallace Drew Shelton battle yet. So we just told you for the last month that that's probably not happening. But it is good to see, because where do you necessarily go? God forbid you lose somebody at an offensive tackle spot. So also, we mentioned Landon Tangwall. Landon Tangwall had the ability to bounce outside as well. So you lose a little bit of versatility there too. JB Nelson, his likely replacement, will also have that ability. But then if you have to move JB Nelson out of the left guard spot to a tackle spot, now you're starting to wonder about that guard depth. So it's amazing how, just one guy goes down and you're trying to figure out now how the pieces kind of shift a little bit differently. So it'll be something to keep an eye on, especially if Penn State, whether it happens during the West Virginia game or if it happens during the Delaware game. Very important to pay attention to where guys come in as far as backups go, and see where they're going to get a lot of reps at.
Yeah, and the good thing with how James Franklin recruits, pretty much everybody could play guard or tackle. There's a long, now it isn't really true now, but on message boards, they're always like, everybody that Franklin recruits is a guard. For a couple of years, it looked that way. I think that's changed a little bit these past few years, thankfully, but all of them definitely have versatility. So if something happens where, like you said, somebody goes down, yeah, you're going to have to kind of play musical chairs a little bit. Don't forget, and I wish we talked more about him last week, Nick Dawkins is there. So Nick Dawkins is a center, but starting center Hunter Norzad could play guard. So if you run into a situation where, you lose a Sal Wormley, you lose a JB Nelson, or somebody goes down on the out on a tackle and you got to kick someone out, Nick Dawkins, from all accounts, could play center. He was injured last year, but I've heard nothing but good things about him.
Yeah, you could do something crazy like move Norzad to guard too and have Dawkins come in if you needed to do something like that.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You had another good point there, but it is. Oh, I was going to mention the whole guard thing. It's funny though, because you look at Alex Burkmeyer, Javen Williams, and Anthony Dunca, 3 of the 4 or 5 that they got. I know Javen Williams and Burkmeyer are starting on the outside, but very likely, at least Burkmeyer could move into guard too. So who knows how that's all going to play out down the road.
Definitely.
But yeah, we'll have to wait and see there. But it's kind of funny because that is true. We do expect Jim Nioto to stay on the outside, but he's got some development still to go there. You ready to talk West Virginia, Sean?
Country roads take me home. Oh, we might get copyrighted. I better not sing the whole thing.
I don't think you're close enough to John Denver where we have to worry about that. In fact, I'm pretty positive we don't have to worry about that at all. But what do I know?
I mean, we could do an emergency pod after the game, and after I have some liquid courage in me, I could sing the whole song if you want.
Nope. I don't. I don't know. Like, it's not just our YouTube channel now, but I'm guessing that they probably don't.
Yeah,
want
that's
that
true.
To happen.
I don't know. Maybe we could check with Adam and Ben.
Yeah. So West Virginia, just some fun facts. Some of these came from all over the place. College Football News, I think, I got some of these from. 5-0 when they ran for 200+ yards under Neil Brown, which I think is pretty crazy. And then you flip that on the other side, they are 4-21 when they run for less than 100 yards. So pretty good company if Penn State can hold them under 100 yards. And they lose their offensive coordinator, Graham Harrell, to Purdue. Neil Brown will actually be calling plays for West Virginia, which, is interesting to me because I tend to not like that. I know it worked for Bill O'Brien, but I tend to think too much focus then shows up on the offensive side of things. And I just wanted to mention Montre Miller. They actually had 2 players from Kent State that transferred in, but they will obviously be former teammates of Penn State wide receiver Dante Cephas. So I just wanted to mention those couple things.
Yeah. Neil Brown calling the plays. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that they know their bread and butter has to be running the ball this season. They promoted their running back coach to offensive coordinator. He won't be calling plays, but he'll be, maybe designs and things like that. But they're going to want to pound the ball, and I don't blame them at all. That's, Garrett Green, mobile quarterback. You got to stick to what you do, and the best part of their team is the offensive line. So that's going to be what they try to do. Something that stood out to me, Penn State's 48-9 against them all time. And when I think of West Virginia football, I think a lot about Pitt, not only because of their rivalry, but just in general. Like, they've had some great teams in the past. And recently, I mean, they haven't been they've been around the same level as Pitt. Pitt's been a little more successful the last few seasons. But Penn State Pitt series, Penn State has the advantage, but it's not nearly as lopsided. So that stood out a little bit to me. And,
Sean, real quick, I wanted to ask you about that because this has kind of brought up a couple times. I mean, since Neil Brown's been there, West Virginia hasn't been very good. They were picked last this year in the Big 12. But what I want to ask you is the rivalry restored aspect of this, to me, doesn't play a role at all. James Franklin said none of these guys were alive when they last played. That's true, but also I'm not getting any sort of rivalry feel to this. I don't know about you, but just I'm excited. It's a primetime game, it's season opener. I'm excited for the game, but no part of me is like rivalry at all.
No, not for me either. And honestly, Cory, I think the thing that surprises me a little bit is I'm not even really getting it from West Virginia very much. Like there's some fans that, Penn State, yeah, we used to play them. But I think they're just very down about their program right now. I think if we played them 15 years ago and Richrod was there, it would be game on. Like I think that would be, and as cool of an atmosphere as it's going to be Saturday, it would be insane if there was a top 10 matchup between Penn State, West Virginia. But I think the juice has left their program for the time being. And if you're not feeling great about your program, it's hard to even get fired up for a rivalry game. Now, internally, if I'm Neil Brown, I would still be selling that rivalry point to my team. So why? Well, a lot of those guys that they have, and some guys they just flat out beat us out for, Doug Nestor, Rodney Gallagher, they stick out. A lot of those guys, they didn't get Penn State offers, or they weren't really they might have got an offer, but it wasn't a committable offer. And guys hold a grudge, and I get it. I'd want to kick our ass too if I didn't get an offer from us and I wanted to play at Penn State, or I was really considering Penn State. But as far as Penn State goes, yeah, I mean, I really don't think it's much of an issue. The rivalry, the old rival factor figures in, partly because that's how James Franklin rolls, but also he is right, and you're right too to point this out. Nobody on that team has ever seen Penn State play West Virginia. Hell, we didn't even see Penn State play West Virginia.
Right. And also, defensive tackle Mulba and linebacker Lance Dixon, former Penn State players, also over there. So you got some recruits that maybe feel, You got some former players. You got wide receiver Devin Carter, who was committed to Penn State and ended up at West Virginia because he thought he'd have a higher. I think the exact quote at the end of it was he thought he'd get more attention and potentially more catches at WVU, which I don't know if anyone told him who was the quarterback for Penn State versus who the quarterback was for West Virginia, but whatever. What do I know?
Yeah, I mean, big fish in a small pond, I guess.
Right. Let's talk West Virginia offense, if that's cool with you, Sean.
Let's do it.
I want this to be clear that I try to list these things as maybe important to less important if you're watching on YouTube. I think it's important to realize how far down Garrett Green, the quarterback for West Virginia, is on this list. Because to me, and honestly, I should have had Donaldson, the running back, on here. I just kind of didn't include him. Garrett Green's not a great quarterback. And 55% completion percentage. He has some wiggle, and he has the ability to run, and he's a good runner. Not a great passer. Not going to come out and throw for 300 yards against Penn State on Saturday. Can pretty much promise you that. But he has the ability to have some escapability, but also some ability to make some plays on his own if needed. And so I think that presents some challenges, but it's not like it's anything Penn State hasn't seen before. But from a pure pass perspective, not overly concerned about Garrett Green, Sean.
Not from a passing perspective. And also you have to consider his receivers. They lost all their receivers from last season, either to graduation or the portal. And they're relying on a lot of new guys. And he also isn't much of a passer. Now, I watched some highlights from their game with Oklahoma last season. And granted, it was the worst Oklahoma team in like 30 years. But they were dead in the water when JT Daniels started that game. And Garrett Green did come in and give him a shot in the arm. Now, he did most of that with his legs, but he did make a couple nice passes down the stretch. So I think he has some gamer in him. I think the key for us, though, is going to be making him throw and not getting into 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 1, because that's where I think West Virginia could excel. And I know, the new rule, we're not going to get too far into it, but I could see them benefit from that. Just moving the chains, keeping our guys on the sideline. And that's how I think they're going to have a chance. But yeah, through the air, I don't think it's going to be anything too spectacular.
Yeah, and I want to shout out to the for the bloggy for doing some really good research into this. Neil Brown's an air raid offense, yet since he's been at West Virginia, every year it has become more balanced towards the run. He still technically throws it more than he runs it, but it went from like 58% down to like 50%. So he's continued to run the ball more every year he's been at West Virginia. And I expect this year to be the year where it flips, where they actually run it more than they pass it, for a lot of different reasons. One of, we just talked about, not a great passing game. And they have a really good offensive line. Zach Frazier, really good center, but they have a couple other guys there too that are pretty fantastic as well. And so I really think West Virginia is going to try to run the football. I don't even think if I was them, I wouldn't even mind going 3 and out, but I'm going to run the ball 3 times and just punt it and just let everybody know that that's how the game's going to be played as long as I can play it. And Donaldson, the running back, he's good. Like he's a solid running back. Over 4 yards per carry last year, like solid, strong running back who will make you pay if you're not paying attention. Penn State's going to have to be gap sound, going to have to make sure Garrett Green doesn't take off. And early on, sometimes we talk about this, Sean, the first couple games, are they going to wrap up well? Are they ready to tackle well? Are they going to be gap sound at the linebacker spot? Are they going to be over amped? Are they going to over pursue their lane? Are they going to blitz too deep? Sometimes we talk about linebackers blitzing and they go more than a hip of the deepest back and they run themselves out of plays. All those little things make a big difference when you're just trying to stop a running attack. And I think all those things will be a good indicator. This is going to be a great indicator for where this Penn State defense is at from a run defense perspective, especially against what I think is a pretty impressive offensive line.
Yeah, no question. And I am happy that Penn State faces a good offensive line to start the season, especially a good interior offensive line. I think around the country, because they might have only saw the Michigan game last year, there are question marks about the defensive tackles. Now, I feel better about the defensive tackles than I did going into the offseason. I do. But they're going to be tested because Zach Frazier is one of the best centers in the country. Probably, let me know if you agree with me or not, probably their best player on their team. And he's going to be a test for those defensive tackles. And getting the second level. And what have I told you guys that I'm a little bit worried about on this defense? Middle linebackers. Now, I've heard really positive things about Kobe King in camp, but he's going to get tested early because Donaldson is a good back. And they're going to, if I'm West Virginia, I'm going to try to run right up the middle on us. I don't know how successful that'll be, but I'd rather take my chances up the middle than having to deal with Chop and having to deal with Carter and Jacobs.
Absolutely.
That's the way I would look at this if I were them.
Last note on Donaldson, he did have a leg injury at midway through the year, but before that he had 4 games of over 100 yards, and we had that stat up earlier about how important it is for West Virginia to get over that 100-yard mark. Donaldson, he's a tall guy, 6'2". He's going to be a difficult guy to bring down if he gets some momentum going. So pay attention to that. Any other thing you want to bring up on West Virginia's offense, Sean?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned I forget his name. What's the coach's name again?
Neil Brown.
Neil Brown. Yeah, his calling card was offense. And it's usually not a great thing when your calling card is something that your team consistently struggles with. So that's kind of added motivation too, because it's no question Neil Brown's on the hot seat. I thought there was a possibility that he might have got canned last season. They decided to bring him back, and he seems like a decent guy, which is one thing I'll say about him. He was very highly complimentary about Penn State, and this is going to be an offense that's going to try to rally around him, I believe. So they're going to try to rough us up front. I think we'll be all right, but we got to get ready to be smacked in the mouth a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I think the first quarter you'll kind of know how this game's going to go, to be honest with you. You'll figure that out.
100%. Definitely.
Let's switch over to the defense now. Kind of an interesting thought about the West Virginia defense. We mentioned this when we previewed them in the summer. Turnovers was not something they did very well. They had very little takeaways. Johnny Dixon and Kalen King combined had more interceptions than the entire defense last year. They only had 4. They're going to have more takeaways. They're going to have to somehow find a way to get more takeaways to beat Penn State. I think we just all agree to that. I don't know if that's going to come very easily, but they're going to have to do a better job. 4 interceptions in a season is not great. Sean Martin and Mike Lockhart, I think, are really good players at the defensive line positions. Lockhart's inside, Martin's outside. They did lose a couple pieces there. Dante Stills is gone. They also lost Jefferson to LSU. So they did lose a couple things there. You mentioned the center, Zach Frazier, being their best player on the team. I think their second best player is Lee Pogba, 92 tackles last year, is a really good linebacker, is a leader of that team. I listened to his press conference this week, and you can just tell there's something about him. Just seems like the heart and soul of the defense. And so that's somebody, I don't know if by himself he can manage the Penn State running game, but I think it's somebody you're going to see his name being called. And if Penn State really does stick to the ground game, I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up with like 10 tackles.
Yeah, he's the guy that really stands out to me on the defense too. He's sort of their playmaker. From what I saw last year from West Virginia, yes, they didn't turn the ball over, and I think if you're trying for an upset, you're going to want to try to create some turnovers, so that could definitely be an issue for them. But yeah, I mean, I think is it Pogba? Yeah, I mean,
yeah, I believe that K is silent.
Right. Yeah, he set the tone for them last season for sure, and I think he's going to be the guy that tries to do it again. Sean Martin, we talked a little bit about a couple months ago. He's probably the second guy that worries me on that defense quite a bit. And then you have Lance Dixon, noted. Lance Dixon, for those of you who don't remember, I think he transferred after the COVID season and from Penn State. Played a little bit here, and then he played a little bit at West Virginia. His issue is just not very big, and I think that kind of held him back a little bit here, and it's also doing it at West Virginia. He's probably going to get in a little bit though, but he's not expected to start for the Mountaineers. Now, West Virginia also didn't release a depth chart just like us, so we don't really know who's starting.
There's some gamemanship there for sure.
100%.
They use a lot of safeties in their defense. Blue White Illustrated had a really good breakdown T. Frage did about their defense, and they like to create angles from like that nickel spot to help in the run game. And so I do think it's going to maybe help keep the running game from being able to bounce it outside. And so I'll be interested to see like if Nick Singleton can continue what he did in the second half of the year as far as hitting the hole, not bouncing, et cetera. I think it's really important in this game to do that because in a way they're almost ready for you on the outside of the way they use their safeties. When I say safeties, Lance Dixon kind of plays that position. Doesn't really drop into coverage like a cover 4 deep. He's not going to be playing quarter. But they use him kind of like that.
Right.
And yeah, Ribeye calls it the spear position. It's the same way that, sometimes we use Jonathan Sutherland. It's the same time, we sort of use Dom DeLuca and I guess Jacobs to that extent too. But that's kind of how and so he'll bounce around quite a bit. Montre Miller, I mentioned him already. 6 interceptions, 16 pass breakups in his career so far at Kent State. So I think he's good. I'll be curious to see how he does playing at this next level. But I don't necessarily feel great about going after him a one-on-one. I mean, we just don't know yet. But I think that's somebody Montre Miller named to kind of remind yourself of in the secondary.
Yeah,
because he's good, but the secondary, Sean, was just so bad last year for West Virginia. I mean, just awful. And so even if they improve, I just don't know by how much. So we said this before, right? Almost think you should throw against West Virginia than you should run. But given that it's Allar's first start, you have a really good running game, at least you think. How does Yurcich decide to play that? That'll be interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing when I was looking at this team, because they were 118th last or 118th last year in passing yards allowed. And for those keeping track at home, there's only about 128 FBS teams, so that ain't great. And you come in with the gotta stop saying that, sophomore quarterback making his first start. So it's, the old school coach in you tells you pound the ball, let Allar be, kind of play a conservative game. But then you look at those numbers, and if you feel good about what Drew Allar's been doing in camp and you think he's ready to do that same thing under the lights, maybe you say let it rip. I mean, maybe. Now, our receivers, there's some worry about our receivers. I wouldn't say I'm super concerned, but there's some trepidation a little bit. And yeah, I don't know. What do you think of that, Cory? Because I just find it such a interesting situation we have.
I think the answer is you split the difference, and I think the tight ends are going to be heavily involved.
Yeah,
to be honest with you,
use your tight ends.
I just think that is the place where West Virginia is going to be the weakest. They don't have anybody to cover Theo Johnson or Ty Warren for that matter. They just don't. They don't have anybody on their roster that can physically cover Theo Johnson, but can also run with Theo Johnson. That person, really, there's not that many people that exist like that, and West Virginia doesn't have one. And so, and you're thrown to a big target. There's a little bit more room for error from a quarterback perspective. You can work into play action easily with the tight ends. I think Theo Johnson has a big game. I think maybe both tight ends have a big game. I think that's where they attack them. If you go back to last year, Kansas State used their tight ends extremely well against West Virginia, and I expect something similar to happen in this game. Again, especially since you're trying to get the quarterback into some rhythm early. Just think about that Minnesota game and how they're able to get the tight ends involved over the middle of the field. I think you're going to see a lot of that again. Crossing routes, deep crossing routes, even some post routes, seam routes. You really can't mess those up, and they're really hard to cover if you're going to try to play some zone. And if you're going to play man against Penn State, they're probably just going to run the football and break that first level, and they're going to be gone. So be curious to see what they do. They're definitely going to try to play back and off of them. They're going to try to keep everything in front of them. They don't bring a lot of pressure. They're not going to be blitzing a ton. And I'll be interested to see how that, affects Drew Allar. Because if they only send 4 and Drew Allar has time, I don't think that's going to end up being very effective for West Virginia. But if they can get there with 4, then it's a whole completely different ballgame. So I think you got to get the tight ends involved early. I think West Virginia's going to try to bend but not break. And I just don't think at the end of the day they have anybody to cover the tight ends. And Yurcich knows it. And something about these mad scientists, Sean, when they know that they have just a very clear advantage, they're going to stress that all day long. So I expect the tight ends to have a field day.
Yeah, and in general this year, this might be a continuing theme with us. Like, if you don't feel fantastic about your receivers, if you have good tight ends, you can just go 12 personnel. And I think you're going to see a lot of that throughout the season, because the truth is there probably aren't a lot of teams that we play who will be able to handle two tight ends like Tyler Warren and Theo Johnson. And this season, I'm expecting, and we talked a little bit about this last week, I'm expecting the running backs to contribute more in the passing game, more swing passes. I think Nick Singleton out in space, with the swing pass, or maybe even, the old school screen passes, he could be very dangerous in that. Now, last year, Katron was probably a better receiver than him. But Singleton in particular, I think, could be pretty lethal if he could put it together, being a receiver. So yeah, I agree with you. I just think it's West Virginia's going to run into some matchup problems when they play us.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to be on both sides of the football. No doubt about it. Are you ready to go to fan questions?
Let's do it.
All right.
Hi, fans.
Before we get there, if you're watching live on YouTube, please make sure you've liked the video and subscribed. State Media is actually already closing in on 1,000 subs. So
saw that. Yep, subscribe.
So we might as well just get there before the first game. I think that's reasonably possible. So make sure you've subscribed if you haven't already on YouTube. Even if you're watching on the pod or listening on the pod, make sure you get on YouTube and subscribe on YouTube. Again, we've got a lot of other content out there. Like I said, the Hackenberg and Brandon Bell podcast just started. And if you're listening on podcasts, make sure you're subbed wherever you're listening as well. Okay, fan questions. Before we get to the fan questions, I just wanted to throw this one up here because I just want to give a shout out to Cowboy Ribeye. I might have messed it. Oh, I clicked the wrong one. That's on me. There we go. I wanted it, and I know it's smaller. We're going to have to figure out a different graphic for this long term. But I just wanted to give a shout out to Cowboy Ribeye because longtime listener to the show, was talking about how he's going to drink a bunch of bourbon on Saturday. But he didn't even have a question this week. He just says, don't have a question. Just want to say it's been a fun off season. No such thing. And I'm ready for the season. Drew is going to be real. Wide receivers are going to surprise people. Not us. We know. And like I said, he'll be at his brother's eating thin crust pizza and hammering an entire bottle of bourbon. So, Ribeye, hopefully you have a fantastic evening on Saturday. Thank you to a lot of the listeners that have been here from, not just this year, but last year as well. And if you've been here all off season, this is your reward. We are finally here. And it's not too late. If you haven't listened to the season preview episode, highly recommend you check out the season preview episode, because we talked about pretty much every player on Penn State's roster, or at least probably at least 60, you think?
Almost. I think we try to get almost everybody, especially the upperclassmen. And good luck on Sunday morning as well, Cowboy Ribeye.
Yeah, let's get to that question or the thing you wanted to discuss in this question here. This is from R. Scats. Any significance to Mike Yursich moving to the booth on game day? And also he mentions that he's going to add some molasses to his chicken wing recipe, which I don't really know. I don't know what to expect by that. I'm not a huge molasses guy, but what do I know? Sean,
I don't know if I've ever had molasses, to be honest with you.
It's very viscous. It's very thick.
Right, slow as molasses in January.
Right. What are your thoughts here on Mike Yursich moving to the booth?
Yeah, I mean, if that's how they feel comfortable, that's fine. And the good thing about being in the booth, I mean, if you've ever been to a game where you sit at the 50 or 40 yard line, you can see everything on the field, and it's even better when you're up a little bit higher, and that's the advantage. Now, I think what was also interesting with what Franklin said and what he mentioned was they feel really good about Danny O'Brien. Now, Danny O'Brien was an analyst at Penn State for I think the last couple seasons, and now he's a GA. So being a GA, you get to have contact with the players. And that tells me that he and James Franklin trust Danny O'Brien to be able to relay what Mike Yurcich wants and to be able to be that first guy that Drew Allar sees off the field and gets to talk to. And of course, they'll be able to get a headset on Drew, and he'll be able to talk to Mike himself as well. But it just lets you see the game better. And if that's what he's comfortable with, if that's what James Franklin's comfortable with, if that's what Drew Allar's comfortable with, then I'm all good with it.
Right. Absolutely. And just imagine, Sean, if the offense does improve because Yurcich is up in the booth, right? I mean, you don't know where this offense is going to be, but just thinking about if that's going to be a direct improvement because Yurcich is going to be able to dial up some more awesome, fantastic calls, that gets you pretty excited about what the ceiling is for this offense. So I agree. I'm excited. I'll be very interested to see how it is. Jaywan Sider will be on the sideline as well, so they'll have him as on the field to help out.
Sure.
And Manny Diaz, if you're just curious, Manny Diaz, defense corner, he'll still be on the sideline.
Yeah, most of the coaches are going to be on the sideline from what I saw.
Yeah. Okay, next question here is from DJ, and he's asking what the first offensive play will be, run or pass. And then they've got a 2-meal tailgate this weekend, which just sounds like a fantastic time between burgers and dogs and then some pizza sandwiches in the afternoon. So enjoy those, DJ. Thank you for the question. Sean, run or pass on the very first offensive play?
I'm going to say run. I'll say Nick Singleton runs for a gain of 4. Nothing sexy, just 4-yard gain, and then we're on our way.
Yeah, I'm going to go pass. I really am. Not just to be contrarian, I really believe it's going to be a pass because I think everyone expects the run. But then you start thinking, if they think we're expecting the run, maybe they're expecting us to pass, and so we should actually run it. But then that would be the obvious thing to do. I don't know if offensive coordinators really get in their head like that. But no, I think they're going to give Drew a chance. If they see the right look, I think they're going to throw it deep, to be honest with you. And if not, I think he checks it down to a tight end. But I think they're going to throw the ball. I really do.
Okay.
So we'll see.
As long as they complete it.
Okay. I'd be okay even if they don't complete it, but they throw a bomb and he throws it 80 yards. And let's say, it's incomplete, but it's close. I would like what that would mean about the confidence they have in Drew Allar.
That would be a baller move. No question.
Yeah. All right. This is our final question today. We didn't take as many, given that we had a lot to discuss today. Longtime listener of the show, Malinovich, he asks, who scores the first Penn State touchdown this Saturday? Assuming that Penn State scores a touchdown this Saturday. But I think that's fairly safe to say. Sean, I'll go first, since you went first to the run pass. I think it's Theo Johnson. I've been harping on the tight ends all episode. I'm going to go Theo Johnson. I think he gets the first one. And I don't know if you can bet on that for the Penn State game. Probably not. But I'd feel pretty good about Theo Johnson getting that first touchdown.
I was going to say Theo as well. I'll go KLS. I'll say 25-yard touchdown to KLS. That'll be the first one.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah, so we're both thinking through the air, but
yeah, I think the safe bet, honestly, is probably Nick Singleton or Katron Allen, but that's not as fun.
Exactly. Yeah, I gotta have some fun. My first play of the year prediction was a 4-yard run gain, so I have to do something here.
Right, exactly.
We are trying to get views here. That is part of the deal.
If we were trying to get views here, we would not be showing our faces all the time.
That is true.
Thank you for the fan questions. Again, we didn't have as many of them. Because, we asked super late, but also we didn't want to talk about fan questions all day leading up to this game. Sean, I think it's time.
Well, we're going to do our Big Ten pick'em.
Oh, yeah, we should do the Big Ten.
Do that first?
Yes,
yeah.
Sorry. we were gonna do the Big Ten pick'em with Hackenberg. That's why it got me all thrown off there. So again, if you haven't done your Big Ten pick'em yet, you have until Thursday night. And honestly, what I might do is after Thursday, I might eliminate the question and let other people still, but they'll miss out on that point. I might leave it open, but they might not be able to get that point anymore for that Nebraska-Minnesota game. But regardless, get your pick'ems in. We had a lot of people last year who tried to get in like halfway through the year, and they were like, "Why can't I catch up with anybody?" I'm like, "Well, you didn't start in week 1, so make sure you start week 1. It takes 2 seconds to fill out the pick'em, and we'll get right after it." Sean, I have my results, but you might have to help me out with. Do you have the slate up by chance?
Give me a second. Get it.
Guess I can pull it up on my phone too.
I got it. Let's see.
Okay, so that first game.
First game. First game of the Big Ten season, we got Nebraska at Minnesota. Who you got?
Yeah, Nebraska, Minnesota. I don't know if you saw that video of Nebraska tight end Eric Gilbert breaking into the vape shot.
Yeah, that was bad.
The guy posted on TikTok with the security cameras, which I thought was just awesome. But at Minnesota, I think Rule gets things going there, but I had Minnesota winning this game.
I got the Gophers too. Road environment. I think Minnesota's going to be decent this year. Got to go with the Gophers.
Yeah. Next game, Central Michigan at Michigan State. This is on Friday. Tuck coming?
Tuck's going to be sweating, I think. So I got Michigan State, but Central Michigan, they're a sneaky team. And I don't feel great about this Michigan State squad, but I'll go Michigan State, maybe a little closer than the experts think.
I was literally going to say closer than the experts think there. East Carolina at Michigan.
Pirates are not going to have their day. I'm going to go with the Wolverines.
Yeah, that one could get ugly.
Yep.
This is kind of an interesting one. Utah State at Iowa, Sean.
Yeah.
Or the same offensive coordinator and Brian Ferentz. So he's got those new contracts in place to score more points. We don't even know if Cade McNamara is ready to start yet.
Wait, what contracts?
Injury. He has built-in contracts now to score points, incentives to score more points.
Oh my God, that's the old coach's son deal.
Yeah.
Anybody else would just get the boot.
Yeah, no, and they're not even that hard of contract things, but they're 25.5 point favorites in this one. Is one of the ones people could pick them for the bonus points. We're doing the bonus points a little bit different this year, but I think Iowa wins, but the 25.5 point spread, I don't even know if Iowa scores 25.5 points.
Yeah, that's a big spread. I'll take Iowa for sure. There's a reason that they're favored by 25.5 points, but I don't really think this is going to be too dynamic of an offense. Cade McNamara, he gave a very cagey answer in an interview a couple days ago about is he healthy, and I'm paraphrasing, and he's just like, yes, or it's a work in progress.
Yeah, he said I'm progressing.
Progressing, that's what it is.
And then he goes, that's all I want to say about that.
Yeah, that's all I'm gonna. Yeah,
that's like the opposite of progressing, but okay.
Yeah, that's not great.
That's one of the ones you just say I'm doing well, and you just move on.
Yeah, my guy's not a good liar for sure.
Yeah.
But
Fresno State at Purdue.
Going with the Bulldogs here. Fresno State, decent program. Purdue, there's a big rebuild there. They lost pretty much all their best players from last season, and they lost their coach. Not saying that their new coach isn't going to be successful, but I think this one has upset written all over it. I'm gonna take Fresno here.
Yeah, I'm taking Fresno too.
There we go. Yeah, it's going to be a rough year for the Boilers, I think.
I really think Purdue could finish at the bottom of the West. I really do. Which I don't. Well, we have Northwestern, so maybe above Northwestern. But after that, Not good. Ohio State at Indiana. I'm going to go with the Buckeyes, and I don't think it's going to be that close.
Yeah, Buckeyes. Hoosiers, rough couple of years. I think it'll be a rough 3 years.
Buffalo at Wisconsin. Luke Fickell's first game at with the Badgers.
Yeah, I think the Badgers grab the dub. I'll go with Luke Fickell to get his first win as Wisconsin head coach.
Me too. I'll be curious to see how good. What's his name out there? Is it not Malachi?
Yeah, I always forget his
Mordecai.
name. Mordecai, yeah.
Curious to see how well he does out there with Phil Longo as his offensive coordinator. Townsend at Maryland. I'm assuming you're going Turtles.
Townsend's going to be fearing the Turtles, yes.
I think. I don't know who. Did Maryland play them last year? I think they did. I think they played them a lot.
Very possible. I don't even know where Townsend is. I'm assuming somewhere close to there.
I don't know.
Maybe.
Toledo at Illinois.
I think the Toledo Rockets emulate Elon Musk, and those Rockets crash. I'm gonna go with the Illini here.
Closer than the experts think here, seriously. And I think the spread is not even that far off. Illinois lost a lot in the defensive backfield, and Toledo is going to throw the ball quite a bit. They can score points. I think that game, like Toledo could win that game. In all seriousness, it's going to depend on how much Illinois can control the game. But I think that's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, Toledo's a good MAC team, so I could see it being close as well.
Northwestern at Rutgers on Sunday.
That's on Sunday? God, the Big Ten makes no sense. Why would you put that game on Sunday? Anyhow, taking Rutgers, State University, New Jersey.
I don't even know if Northwestern can score 10 points on Rutgers. And that's not.
I mean, they were pretty bad last year, and they lost all their best players. So.
Right, and Rutgers isn't even a bad defense. I'm not trying to knock on them, but I'm just saying if you can't even score 10 on Rutgers, it's going to be a long year.
Yeah. I mean, Rutgers, when we talked about them, when we were previewing them, we highlighted their defense. I think their defense is pretty solid, but yeah, that could be. I think it'll be like a 20-3 game.
Yeah,
good game to fall asleep to.
Yeah, when you're hungover on. Well, we know Ribeye is going to be hungover watching that game.
All that bourbon, yeah.
Okay, bold predictions time, Sean.
All right. I'm gonna say, now, Cory and I share a bold season prediction. Now, I picked a different one because Cory picked it first. That Nick Singleton and Kane Allen are gonna have 30 touchdowns between them. I think we're gonna see 3 touchdowns between Kane and Nick Singleton on Saturday night.
So if they averaged 3, that'd put them at what? 36?
36. Yeah.
So they almost need to have a couple 3 games to get there.
Absolutely, yeah, because you're going to have games that they only have 1, between them.
Higgins right now, if he was watching live, which I'm not sure if he is, he'd be telling us to stop doing math while we're ahead because we usually end up messing up math the more we start doing it.
Yeah, he's our stats and figures and math guy.
No, that's a good prediction. I like that one. I think that's definitely possible. My bold prediction, and it also might slightly give away my prediction for the game, but my bold prediction is West Virginia doesn't score a touchdown.
Oh, that is bold.
Sean, you got to understand, when we go on bold predictions here, everybody knows. I've had fans write me letters that I go more bold on my bold predictions than you. That's just what the talk around town is.
For real?
I'm just bolder.
All right. If you want to see some hot takes, I could pull out some hot takes next week.
Let's see them for Delaware.
Delaware scores 24 points next week. I mean, then it would just be an absolute panic. But they'd be like, we didn't go bold in that direction.
No, I was looking at this and I'm like, I think West Virginia moves the ball a couple times. Don't get me wrong. I think, I'll get to my prediction in a second. I just think about how good they were defensively in the red zone last year. West Virginia's offense actually wasn't bad in the red zone, but Penn State's defense was even better in the red zone. And if West Virginia can't score in the first quarter, I just don't see how it's going to get better for them. right? If they get down early and they have to start throwing the ball more and Garrett Green's running for his life, it turns into a Talia Tagovailoa situation last year where he's just running for his life and people are feasting. And I get it, right? Like you never know. We might have the last second, who knows? But I just think if they don't, like, if you go to that half and it's like, just say 14-3, I'd feel pretty good about West Virginia not scoring a touchdown in the second half.
Yeah, the difference between them and Maryland, though, Maryland's offensive line was really shot when we played them. And that's why Talia he was there, but he just didn't have a chance. That's not really the case with this one. Now, the problem West Virginia runs into is their skill position guys. Donaldson we feel good about, but that's about it. Garrett Green could do some things with his legs, but if you're a one-dimensional team against Penn State, it's going to be tough sledding.
Absolutely. Shawn, I can't believe we're freaking here, man. We are moments away from our first season, or first game prediction of the season. And I mean, it's been a long time coming. I mean, just go back, everybody, and remind everybody in January, in February, and we're saying, hey, the season's going to come before you. Season's going to come before you. We were lying to you, but here we are. It's finally here. We're ready to rock and roll, and couldn't be more excited. Like, we are about to make our predictions for the first game of the season. Can't believe it, Shawn. I had made my first season prediction, so I'm going to let you go first, Shawn, with the first prediction of the year.
All right. So we're finally here, guys. I echo everything Cory's saying. I mean, we did it. We're here. It feels in some way like the Rose Bowl just happened, but also it feels like the Rose Bowl was 20 years ago. It's one of those deals. But I'm just excited to be back. And I'm excited to go back to Beaver Stadium. So I'll be seeing Mr. Lestochi on Saturday. Maybe we tweet a picture out of us if we're not too inebriated. And yeah, it'll be my fiance's first night game, so I'm excited about that. But most of all, I'm excited about this team, and I think this team could really do some special things. And I think it could start on Saturday night. And first NBC game for the Big Ten, I think we put on a bit of a show. And I have Penn State. I do think West Virginia scores a touchdown. I have Penn State winning the game 42-14. So I have them scoring 2 touchdowns.
I just want to make sure I write down your bold prediction too, so I can keep track of them this year.
I'll write mine down too.
Shawn, I like that prediction. I'm not far behind you, I believe, on this one. I agree with you. I can't believe we're back. We were living in Alabama for 4 years. We were able to go to a game or two during that time. But this is the first game back living in State College again. We're talking about tailgating plans again. We're talking about being with friends and family again that we haven't seen for a long time. It's just going to be a celebration before even the game starts. And so we're just going to be excited to be back. And I really think it's just going to be a party on the field. I just really think it's just going to be a celebration. And that stadium is going to be filled with so much optimism and so much excitement. You're going to be able to just taste it. And I can't wait to be in there on Saturday, because it's just going to be something different. Too many times we don't have those home openers the way we'd like to have them, not as an exciting of a game, and we finally have a bigger game. I know West Virginia's not, a huge ranked opponent, but this still seems like it's going to be a fun time, a celebrating time, prime time event, white out for all intents and purposes. It's going to be a really awesome time. I can't wait for it. I wish they would do this kind of stuff more, to be honest with you. No more neutral site games. Get back to playing home and homes to open up the season. College football would benefit from that. I really think this defense is fantastic. I think this is going to be a really good test for the defensive front seven against this offensive line and this running back. And I think they passed that test. And I think they only had to pass that test for about 2 quarters. And then the offense will have enough of a lead where they're going to force Garrett Green into some mistakes. And he's going to end up having to try to do too much, and that's going to cost him. I don't know how much of the offense is going to be opened up. I want to believe that Drew Allar gets to throw the ball over the yard, but I still think they're going to go with their bread and butter, and that's Fat Man and Gatorade. And I have Penn State winning this 34-6. Could easily see it being 42 like you had, but I'm going 34-6. I'm assuming no pick sixes, no kick returns for touchdowns, manufacturing of 4 touchdowns and maybe 2 field goals. Maybe they stall once or twice in the red zone. And I think West Virginia stays out of Penn State's end zone. So I got 34-6. I think West Virginia gets a field goal first half, and they get a field goal in the second half, but they get kept out of the end zone. And I think we talked about this last week. I think the defense really flexes their muscles and shows what they're capable of. And at the third and fourth quarter, the talent of the depth chart really comes into play. So that's what I got.
Yeah. So we both have Penn State covering. Yep. Yeah, I think the second touchdown I give West Virginia will be toward mop-up time too. So maybe even Garrett Green's still in, but Chop, Abdul, Kalen will be out of the game. So right. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun night. There's still tickets available, and they're not crazy expensive too. So if you're thinking last minute you're gonna go to the game, go to this one because it's gonna be fun. It's I think Franklin called it like a mini whiteout or something, which I think he's right about. And we kind of talked about that a little in the off season. So
right.
Yeah, this will be a fun one to go to. Weather's going to be beautiful too.
Sometimes I think when the backups get in, because you're right, like maybe there's a blown coverage, something freak happens, they get a touchdown. The other side of it is those young guys want to compete and prove that they deserve to go from a yellow light to a green light. That's true. They actually pile it on. Right? I mean, Bo Prabila gets in the game. He's going to run the rock. He's going to try to score touchdowns. Trey Potts, he's going to try to, to run at you and run you over. So I'd be very curious to see if they get to that point and the backups do get in, what happens, because there's a lot of competition right now, and those backups are nothing to joke about. So we'll see how that goes.
Sure, and we've talked a lot about how deep this team is, and God, if you start going to your third string defensive ends, I mean, I think we feel good about Zariah Fisher. Maybe a Jamil Lyons is factored in there. He's gonna be one of those guys you talked about, trying to go from a yellow light to a green light. The linebackers, I feel really good about a guy like Dom DeLuca. I would like to see maybe Tamir Robinson. Maybe he tries to make a Keon Wiley. So there are guys with something to prove all over this defense and all over the team, really. So I hope we get to the point where we're able to see them on Saturday.
Absolutely.
Just in general.
Just to remind everybody that they played a lot of people at the beginning of the year last year, like an insane amount. I think one game they had 19 people catch a pass or something like outrageous like that. So they're going to try to get people in as best they can early on and see what they actually have from a talent perspective. So
yeah, even against Purdue, where the game was super close, we still played a lot of guys.
Right. That's a very good point. And hopefully Abdul Carter stays away from the targeting and gets to play the entire opener.
Yeah, it'd be nice to see him the whole opener.
Right. Sean, we're done. We're out of here. The first game preview is done, wrapped up in the books.
Awesome. Yeah, God, I'm used to going till 11 when the season starts. And maybe we will eventually, but I like the 7 o'clock start.
Me too.
Better. I think I prefer it.
No, I like the 7 o'clock start as well. Again, if you're watching live on YouTube, please make sure you've liked and subscribed. If you're watching or listening to the podcast, whether you're driving to the game, have someone next to you, subscribe to wherever you're listening to this podcast. We really appreciate it. We're really excited for this season. We're excited to be working with State Media and Mercury. Excited to have more guests on the show. We're just excited about everything, and it couldn't have happened without you guys. So we're here, Sean. Thank the Lord.
I know. It's just super exciting, and we'll be back Monday, not
Correct.
Sunday. So we'll be back Monday to, wrap it up. Hopefully we have lots of good things to talk about. Hopefully no bad things. And then it'll be on to Delaware from there.
Sounds good. Well, for Sean Kane, I'm Cory Lestochi. You've been listening to Hardcore Penn State Football. Hopefully we'll see you on Saturday, and we'll be back on Monday to wrap things up. See you later, everybody.